Hello, Simmers. This is your captain speaking. And for today's video, I'm going to start a short series of videos with NIMBI Rails. And this will be kind of a getting started tutorial, help for new users on NIMBI, and see if we can get them to where they can build some tracks and load up some trains and make sure that things are working the way they would like to. NIMBI Rails is somewhat a new game program on Steam. Not very expensive, kind of fun to play. So first of all, let's go ahead and I want to take a look at the startup menu that you can see before you now with here in this dialog box. This is the way NIMBI comes up, and there are several different ways that you can play the game. Single player mode is probably the way you do most of your gaming within NIMBI Rails. Multiplayer is a way that you can play the game along with other users. And this game sharing here is where you can share games that you have played, or you can browse and look at the shared games that other users have gone. So let's take a look at each of these options. Under single player, you can continue a game that you have already started. You can start a new game. When you start a new game, you're started off with a fresh new world without any Rails systems included at all. Or you can load up an old game from those that you have saved before. With the game under game sharing, you can look at the games that you have played, and I mean, not the games that you get played, but the games that you shared out. I've not shared any, so all of my slots are empty. Apparently, you're allowed to share 5 games in the system, and apparently you can delete the games that you have played, so you can upload some more. Or you can browse the shared games. If I click here, you'll notice here a number of places where other users have created tracks, and you can download those and play the tracks that they have shared. Currently, there are 537 shared games in the system. Multiplayer, you can join a game that's in session, or you can host your own game and have people join you. NIMBI Rails wiki will open up a web page in the Steam browser to get some help on NIMBI. Right now, the wiki is not really filled out very much, but there are a few things here that can be of help, especially over here, the guides, how to build track, the quick start guide, and how to use depots. I think some of these guides are on Steam as well. You can find them there. Some of these basic concepts they have over here, they're very, very brief, like on track, gives you a definition of what a track is, and what a blueprint is. And so it's not a lot of help in the wiki, but there is some help there for you if you want to go and find it. To get back to the game, you can click up here at the top, click here to return to the game, or just press Shift Tab like that, and that brings you back to the game. The Options button, of course, brings up a dialog box where there are various options. We'll take a look at that in just a moment. The Credits button opens up basically what is an About box, where you can see what version you're running. I'm currently running 1.8.27.17254. That was published on May the 23rd in 2023, which happens to be today. And so I'm running the very latest version of NIMBI Rails for this video. And you can see some of the software and things that were used that went into the writing of NIMBI Rails. Click the back button to come back to the opening screen. And then the one last button here, this button at the bottom, you can click to quit to the desktop. Let's go back to the Options button for a moment and take a look at that. Under Options, there are 4 buttons at the top, and you can think of these as tabs. Clicking on each one of the buttons or tabs opens up a different section of the Options dialog box. So under General, you can set up the autosave slots. These are the number of times a game will be saved before the saved files begin to be overwritten. And so right now I have mine set up with 4 slots, which means that every time I start a game, it will write 4 backup files over a period of time. The interval tells you how often one of those backup files is written. And once you get to the maximum number there, then the oldest, when a new one is saved, the oldest one will be deleted, and all of them will be renamed so that number 1 is the latest save, number 2 is a little older, number 3 is a little older than that, number 4 is a little older than that. Auto export accounting, I'm not exactly sure what this is referring to, but there is some accounting in the program. You buy your tracks and your stations, and you spend money during the program. Then you make money by running the trains on the tracks that you've built, and apparently that is either saved or not saved when you export the games that you've created. The language is the language of the system. For example, it is set up here for English. English is the only language that I have installed. You can click here and see if the language that you prefer has been created, and you'll have to dig in here to find those. For example, here's apparently probably Japanese, I suppose, a Russian version, and so on. So you can download each of these or any of these that you're interested in and install them. I'm not exactly sure how to do that, but you can do that, install them, and then you can set up NIMBI Rails in your own language. The default font is, I suppose, the font that's used to create labels in Chinese. and the map names priority. This also has to do with the labels, and it basically is, do you want the labels to be printed in English, or do you want them to be printed in the native language for whatever country you're viewing on the map? And so you can choose that. Here's another tool. I'm not quite sure what this is. Track tool, keybind, hold mode. Oh yes. If you enable that, that means that in order to use the tools in NIMBI Rails, you have to hold down the button that stands for that tool while you drag your mouse around. That really is, in my estimation, inconvenient. So that's best left unchecked. I suppose some people might like it, but most, I suspect, will not. The control points, showing the control points at low zoom is checked by default, and or hide the control points at low zoom is checked by default. And the reason for this is when you get into a low zoom, when you zoom out a distance, then all of these various control points will start to clutter up the screen quite a bit. So it hides them under those circumstances so that you can see what's behind those control points a little easier. Alerts pause game. You can set this, and any time there an alert is generated. Alerts are generated by various what you might call errors or situations. And if this might be helpful, especially if you're a new user and you're getting used to the game and you're learning what the alerts are. If the alert comes on, then this will cause the game to pause and the trains will not run and nothing happens at that point. It gives you a time to deal with the alerts. There are a number of different kinds of alerts, and you can select on each one of these alerts individually or deselect them so that you get an alert on each one of these conditions. By default, alert on line is closed is selected, as is track is occupied or reserved, and no path to destination, lost or bad orders, and collision. And waiting at a signal by default is not selected. Each of these selected items has a time to wait until you get the alert after the condition begins. So 60 minutes after a line is closed, if you haven't dealt with it by then you'll be given an alert for that. Same thing down here for collision. If a collision occurs, then 1 minute after the collision, you'll get an alert on that. By default, you don't get an alert on waiting at the signal. If you click that button, then you get the option down here to set the number of minutes to wait on to get the alert. Now I'm just going to put that back to the default. Graphics allows you to configure your system or configure the program in the way that you want it to use the graphics. And there are a number of options that you have under this tab. Scaling, I have currently set to 1x, can be set anywhere from auto and 1x up to 3x. And you're going to want to be careful about setting this to different values. If they get very large, then the controls are going to start overriding one another and you won't be able to see everything. For example, at 1x, if I go in and look at a game, let's just go here and load up one of my games. to see what it looks like. This is how the screen looks when the scaling is set to 1x. It has a track bar here, a track bar over here, and then this is kind of a status window, and you can see everything very easily. But if we go back and go back into options again and graphics and set it just to 2x, you can see that the screen has scaled up. If we go back here now and we select continue game, and you'll notice here in the 2x, this menu is almost off the screen, or part of the menu is almost off the screen. If we go into continue game and look at these same toolbars and status bars, they're starting to overwrite one another now. And I just wonder, I'm going to click back here and quit the game, go back to options and graphics. Let's try 3x, see what that looks like. So that's 3 times the default scaling. If we click back here now we can't even get to all of the options because the menu has gone off the screen. So be careful about the scaling that you use. We'll just go back to 1x. MSAA is a multi-sampling anti-alias technique. By default, mine is set to 4, and you can disable it, or you can set the number of bits that you want to be averaged together for the anti-aliasing. Anti-aliasing is a method to keep lines from looking jagged. Lines become jagged because pixels are not round, and the pixels are not infinitely small. And if all the lines were just made of simple pixels with the same color, then you would see some jagged edges there. But what happens with anti-aliasing is that the colors are averaged in those areas where a jagged edge would appear, and the eye sees that as a straight line then. And this is just a way to make that line look better. The mode is for whether you want to be in full screen mode, that they call windowed full screen, or in windowed mode. In windowed mode, it simply changes NIMBI Rails to fit it within a window on the screen. Most, I think, are going to want it in the full screen mode. And just a tip on that, if you're ever in a full screen mode window like this and you need to access other parts of your computer, remember, on a Windows computer, by pressing the Windows key and releasing, you can get the start menu to pop up and the taskbar to show up, and so you can start other applications and run. So even though we're in a full screen mode like this, we're still able to see the program. We're still able to see the applications and other features of the computer that the program is running on. The display, you can choose the display to use. I have 2 monitors on mine, and one is a 1920 by 1080 monitor, the monitor I'm using at this point. The other is a 1600 by 900 monitor, and I have the largest monitor set for my playing of the game. And then finally, the VSync stands for vertical synchronization. It's a signal that some monitors use to prevent or to help with flicker. If you have flicker on your screen, either enabling this or disabling it may help you in your case. A lot of monitors nowadays, it doesn't matter whether you have this enabled or disabled, but some monitors will make a difference there, so you can play around with this to find out what works best for you. Now the keybinds tab is pretty self-explanatory. There are a number of different commands and features that you can access by key binding, and these keybinds are similar to the keybinds that you'll find in other programs like WS. Let's see, W, A, S, and D are used kind of like a cursor keys. I have also added the up, down, left, and right for the same functionality on my computer. So you can set up your own key binding if you wish. You can change all this if you wish, and do whatever you want to do with that. Now remember, some of the documentation that you see will refer to some of these key bindings, the default key bindings in the documentation. So for example, if you change the zoom out key or the zoom in key in the documentation, you'll see that the default is Q and the default for zoom out is Q and the default for zoom in is E. So if you change it, then whatever the documentation is will be of no help to you any longer. Finally, the uploader tab is for developers. And that's going to be out of scope for anything that I publish on NIMBI Rails, so we'll just skip that at this time. Well, let's take a real quick look now at the game interface, and then we'll call this video complete. And in the next video, we'll come in and start looking at building of tracks and stations and things of that nature, and try to get some really important concepts in mind. But let's go into a game. We'll start with a new game, and the company name is generated here, Only Access, and that's as good a name as any. We'll go ahead and start with that. You can start with unlimited money, which means that you never run out of money. You can spend as much money as you wish, never run out. But really, when you play with without unlimited money, you're given a lot of help in this game. So it's hard to run out of money. You start out with a $1 billion loan, and you can borrow up to 3 times in the game, and each time you borrow, you can borrow up to $3 billion, and they don't look at your credit or anything like that. So it's pretty hard to run out of money with this game, so we just keep this unchecked. Unrestricted coupling is a little bit obscure to me. I think that has reference to the coupling of mismatched train sets. For example, coupling a full-blown train to a tram might not be something that you would ordinarily do, but this game will allow it, and I think this unrestricted coupling is what you would do to get that ability. So we're just going to keep that as the way it is. The mods button is where you can go in and select the mods that you have downloaded and use them within the game. If you want to, you can click a button down here and install every mod that you've got. And you can go and find new mods on the internet and download those and install all those. The built-in mods are, there's nothing wrong with them, and they work fine. And so for our purposes here, we're just going to keep the built-in mods. So we're going to click back. Going to go to new game as we did before. Let's see what happened. Here we go. I guess, oh, I was already in there. So we're trying to start the on access game. So we're going to click on start game, and that brings us into the location where you finished up the last that you were playing. But now we have the full world to play with. And here we are in the world, and not a single train has been built for this world at all. Let's go to Chicago, and we'll just kind of zoom in here. And I saw this a little earlier and kind of interested me. Chicago has a light rail system, or a tram system that goes all over the place. And I think what we will do is, let's see, where was I earlier today? I don't recall. But let's just start right here. Any place is fine, and we'll pretend that we know what we're doing here. But here is Chicago, and we'll start right here. And these are the track bars. There are two track bars available. One on the left, which is your builder's track bar, and then over on the right is a kind of information and miscellaneous track bar. One of these things that I want to show you first on this miscellaneous is this button right here, the main menu button. If you click that, then you get this button down here, which looks similar to the startup menu that we had before. And you can start a new game from here, save the current game that you're playing, you can share the game that you were playing. You can open up the NIMBI Rails wiki from here. You can go to options and credits. So most of these buttons are just like the buttons we've seen before. In addition, there is a quit game button. This will quit the current game, take you back to the startup menu. You can quit to the desktop, which will quit the game completely and take you back to your system. And you can return to the game. So now you know how to get out of NIMBI Rails, and anytime you want to do that, just come over here to the main menu and click there. Now we're going to return to the game. Over here with the builders menu, there is a button for info. This is the info mode, and there's no tracks or anything over here for us to look at, so there's nothing for us to click on. But if we had trains running, we could click on a train and get information about that. This is the track and station building menu, and you click on that, you'll get this these dialog boxes coming up and a new toolbar down here. This toolbar has 7 buttons, it looks like. This button here is to move, delete, and edit tracks. Once you have tracks on the screen, you can manipulate them when this button is enabled. This button appends tracks to tracks or creates new ones. And you click on this button to get that, and that opens up some more dialog boxes. You get a dialog box for the type of track that you want to build, and you get a dialog box for the level that you want the track to be built at. And these buttons over here on the right are for above ground levels. This is 1 above the ground, 2 above the ground, 3 above the ground. Then infinite above the ground means you can just cross, and the program will take care of where all the tracks are at, and they won't collide with one another. On the left-hand side are for the underground tracks, -1, -2, -3 depth, and then there's also an infinite depth here. Really, you don't need to worry very much about this, because if you're doing below ground tracks, for example, this is a high-speed tunnel, you can go anywhere, and if you cross another track, well, it looks like they actually did cross at the same level, which is a little surprising, because before I saw this, it seemed like they would never cross, but apparently that's not that's not the way it's working now. So here they're crossing at the same level, and so they're actually attaching to one another. You could end up having wrecks as a result of that. So if the infinite is selected and infinitely low, then, and you cross, they're not going to cross at the same level. They're going to cross at various levels, and it doesn't matter how many times you do that, they'll always cross at a different level, and there'd be no fear of colliding with a train that was built in this way. And so that's what that's for. Then there is the split and tape tools. The split and tape tools will divide tracks into various parts. I'm still learning a little bit about the split and tape tools. I'm not sure how all of it works yet, so hopefully by the time we get talking about that, I'll have a little bit more understanding of that. Then there is the Create Stations tool, and this is a tool that will create a complete station where trains can stop and load and unload its passengers. There's curved tracks, and well, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. After the Create Stations button, there is the Create New Buildings, and this button is mostly for aesthetics. Buildings that you create don't have any real functionality in the game. They're just used, for looks. Then there is the Move, Delete, and Edit Signals button, and this allows you to go and select signals that are on the tracks, and you can move them, or you can delete them, or you can change the type of button it is. This is a one-way, and if we want to, we can change it to a no-way button. And then the Create New Signals is a button where you can create the various types of signals that you want on your rail line. One thing that happens when you click these buttons is that a number of buttons down here will be added to this toolbar. When I clicked the Create New Signals button, these 5 buttons appeared. And the first one is for the one-way signal, then the platform train stop point, the Bach Belize, the path signal, and then the no-way signal. And we'll go back up here to the append track signal. There are 3 buttons now that are added to it. The double track mode, the continuously append track segments was added in 1.8, and the start or merge branches when pointing on top of existing tracks button is here. And these set different modes of operation for when you're adding tracks to the screen. The split and tape tools button will add the split tracks button to select that mode, the track tape button mode, and the promote tracks to station platforms. There's a building tape button and parallel track tape button. As I said a moment ago, I'm not real familiar with what the tape buttons do. Pretty satisfied that I know what the split tracks button does, but I'll try to learn what these are before we get to them in our next video. The create buttons, it also adds certain buttons to the to this button bar. Nothing added here for the create new buttons, but it does put a bunch of buttons up here at the top. And nothing for this button, the move, delete, and edit signals, or the move, delete, and edit tracks button. Neither one of those buttons adds any additional buttons. And we looked at the create new signals buttons a moment ago. Well, that's, I think, enough for today's video. When we come back, we'll cover this toolbar over here on the right that has some additional tools that you'll be interested in. And we'll start building some tracks in NIMBI Rails. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.